There's a theory in language learning that I don't think a lot of people talk about. It's called trade-off hypothesis. Remember our triangle from earlier, right? Accuracy. It's actually a scientific theory called incubation. You recall them automatically as combination units, not one word at a time. 大家好，我是Ray，新年快乐。今天来和大家分享一些重要的英语口语秘诀。I went from not knowing a single word of English to teaching native speakers of English at the university level in Canada. And I also became an IELTS speaking examiner. The point of this video is not to brag, because I used to be at the beginner level. And I used to be at the intermediate level as well. And now I'm still working on my English. So I know what it's like. I want to share with you guys 3 pieces of advice that I've gleaned over the years that have helped me tremendously in my journey to unlock fluent English speaking. And these are not just my personal opinions. They're supported by cognitive science and explained in books, such as this one, Educational Psychology by authors Woolfolk, Winnie, and Perry. So, what is the science behind speaking? Now, it's crucial to answer this question first, because later you'll feel like a light bulb just switched on in your head, and my 3 pieces of advice will all make sense, I promise. So our brain has limited processing capacity. That's the first thing we need to establish. Think of it like a computer CPU. If you open too many heavy programs at the same time, everything starts to slow down, right? It lags and freezes and even crashes. Speaking English is just like that. When you're speaking, your brain is trying hard to do many things at once. You're choosing the right words, thinking about grammar, organizing your ideas, thinking about pronunciation, and even monitoring your own mistakes, right? And the problem is that you have very little time to do all of these. And based on this idea of limited processing capacity, there's a theory in language learning that I don't think a lot of people talk about. It's called trade-off hypothesis. And this was first proposed by the well-known language researcher Peter Skehan. And the idea is that speaking is like a triangle with 3 sides. Okay, you have fluency, you have accuracy, and you have complexity. So think about that for a second. When you're speaking, you cannot expect to focus on all 3 sides at the same time, realistically. If you try hard to use advanced vocabulary or perfect grammar, your fluency will drop, right? If you focus on fluency, then you cannot recall advanced vocabulary and grammar structures fast enough, unless you know them super well, like a native speaker would. Because speaking is time pressured, it's immediate, you don't get a lot of time. So based on this trade-off theory, here are the 3 pieces of advice that helped me become fluent. The first one is this: whenever you're unsure about something in your learning, if you have a question, go and look it up and resolve that confusion right away. For example, what's the difference between stressed and stressful? What's the difference between electric, electrical, electronic? 都是形容词，对不对？有什么区别？ Or how do I pronounce this word? Is it conduct or is it conduct? 这个重音要放在哪里？ I'm gonna check. 你要去搜一下。Oh, the verb is conduct and the noun is conduct. 对不对？ That's the difference. Or for example, maybe my friend says social medias is grammatically wrong and I wonder why. Let me check. Media is already a plural word, so the singular version is medium, and there should not be any S after media, right? That's why. And these doubts are not going to fix themselves. You have to proactively look them up. You have to understand the meaning, the usage, the differences, and look at some examples. And research in cognitive science shows that we're much more likely to remember something when we put in effort to figure it out. If you take the time to figure out a word, your brain is going to consider that event important and retain it well. You'll probably even remember when, where, and how exactly you learned that word. And for example, I can tell you, I remember specifically when I learned the first word depict. from one of my classmates when I lived in Singapore. And he was using it during art class. I heard it and then I went searching for it. And now I still remember the specific details. So if you resolve these uncertainties and find answers, your word choices become more precise, leading to better speaking accuracy over time. Remember our triangle from earlier, right? Accuracy. And also you become more sure and confident, which leads to better fluency as well, right? So that improves both fluency and accuracy. I want you to remember this idea. When you hear someone speaking English fluently, it seems like magic on the surface, right? So effortless and so easy. But there's actually thousands of micro decisions going on in that person's head. Every sentence we speak, we're making choices. We decide between this word or that word, this structure or that structure. So resolving your uncertainties, building that knowledge one step at a time is the only real way to become fluent. Okay, the second piece of advice is, I know it's really tempting to constantly try and use big, sophisticated words for complexity to impress people, but you have to understand that you cannot rush the process of developing vocabulary. It's actually a scientific theory called incubation, proposed by the psychologist Graham Wallace. You can read more about it if you're interested. So the idea is that you actually need time off from learning for neural connections in the brain to establish between your learning sessions. This is basically like needing time for eggs to hatch into chickens, or if you go to the gym often, you know that muscle actually grows during your rest days, between your gym sessions, not actually when you're working out. So biologically, for new knowledge to take shape in your brain, you need time. Unless you're a genius or learning freak like Elon Musk or something. So, coming back to our triangle of fluency, accuracy, and complexity, in the meantime that you gradually build your vocabulary in the background, prioritize fluency in your speaking. That's really important. Prioritize fluency by using more common vocabulary or vocabulary you already know. I see learners trying hard to use big words all the time, saying things like, that is utterly intriguing, instead of just, that's really interesting. When they try really hard to retrieve big words, they hesitate, they slow down, and fluency suffers. Or these big words may not fit a particular context, and so their wording choices sound really awkward. For example, I have a friend who's a mid-level English learner, and one time I remember someone was asking her where she and her friends lived, right? And then she said, "We reside in this neighborhood." This sentence totally works, okay, yes. But the word reside is used in something like legal documents. It's too formal, so it felt really awkward in a casual conversation. And so under time pressure, retrieving less familiar vocabulary takes more effort, and you're more likely to pause for a long time or maybe choose the wrong word. And even native speakers slow down when they're searching for the right word. Don't forget that language is for communicating meaning, right? I think a lot of people tend to forget that, and fluency matters hugely. Fluent English is good English. You don't need huge words, okay? Don't force huge words too soon, because it takes time to really understand new vocabulary, to understand their meaning, their connotations, how to use them naturally in the right context. Okay, so the last piece of advice for today, the most important one, I think. Learn vocabulary in chunks, okay? In groups and combinations, not individual words. Don't just learn single words like decision or impact or outcome. Instead, try to also pick up the surrounding words. What other words and structures are commonly used together with them? For example, the word decision, make a decision, come to a decision. Or the word impact, right? This event has a negative impact on people. People feel the impact of this event. Or the word outcome, right? produce an outcome, lead to an outcome 这些非常常见的搭配。The ideal outcome, the worst possible outcome. Because when you're speaking, you don't have time to build sentences one word at a time. You need ready-made combination pieces. That's going to give you speed and fluency. It's just like professional musicians. How do they read and play music from a score when they see it for the first time without any prior rehearsal? And the answer is they don't read one note at a time. That would be too slow. No. Instead, they recognize patterns, sequences, structures on the sheet, and then they recall from their memory how to play these patterns in whole units, entire units. Same thing in speaking. When you learn these groups, these chunks, you recall them automatically as combination units, not one word at a time, right? And also, the other thing is practice saying these combinations in different imaginary contexts. I'll give you some examples. Today, I made a decision. Making a decision is hard. A decision was made by the group. Help me make a decision. Or how did you come to this decision, right? There are 3 major benefits of learning this way. First, it improves your speaking fluency because you're using chunks, you're not using single words. And second, it makes you sound more native because native speakers use these chunks, these common combinations. And third, when you use these chunks, you're buying time to think about what to say next. For example, when you say, in terms of something something, or needless to say something something, or it's pretty obvious that something something. So with these, you have, when you're saying them, you have time to think about what's coming next. Okay, let's summarize the 3 pieces of advice from today. First, proactively resolve your confusion for better accuracy and fluency over time. And second, prioritize fluency over complexity. And understand that building vocabulary takes time. You cannot rush it. And finally, learn vocabulary in chunks, groups, and combinations. Okay, if you follow these principles consistently, your speaking will become second nature. I guarantee it. Let me know in the comments which of these tips is your favorite. 好，今天就讲这么多。今天的一期视频不想做太长，没有办法讲到一些其他的同样重要的纯正英语学习秘诀。但是呢，我在这里会继续定期分享，大家喜欢的话可以关注。Let's hang out again in the next one.